Welcome to Lighten Up, the Art of Living Clutter-Free, a podcast where we tackle the literal and figurative clutter standing between you and your healthiest and happiest life. I'm Melanie, your host, coach, and guide on this journey to help you design a life that you love. Whether it's clearing out your kitchen cabinets, untangling your digital files, or letting go of the mental blocks that hold you back, we're here to make space for what truly matters. Let's lighten up together, starting now.
Okay, welcome back to another episode of Lighten Up, the Art of Living Clutter-Free, the podcast where we talk about all things clutter. And today we're going to talk about physical clutter and mental clutter and all the clutter. I have a special guest with me today. I have Diana Feinstein. She is the head transformation specialist at Max Pact Health Coaching, where she guides clients through life's physical and emotional transitions with clarity, with strength, and purpose. Blending science-backed strategies with biometric insights and deep emotional grounding, Diana creates space where honest conversation dissolves self-sabotage and vulnerable moments become catalysts for lasting change. She specializes in helping individuals and couples navigate perimenopause, burnout, and midlife health pivots, reframing wellness as a lifelong investment in strength, vitality, and agency. And if you just heard all of that, you know she's my gal. Diana, thank you for being here.
So excited to be here. I'm so excited.
Awesome. Okay, so that's a great bio on what you do. I would love for you to share with everyone how you got to where you are doing what you do.
God, I love this question. So I knew when I was 5 that I was meant to change the world. I saw Mother Teresa of Calcutta on the television. It was like one of my earliest memories. And I turned to my dad and I said, I'm going to join her in her convent when I'm 14, because that's when she's accepting people. And my dad turned to me and he said, doctor, lawyer, engineer, failure. And it was in that moment that my high achiever was born, given tons of fertilizer and was masterfully cultivated in that moment. You know, it's funny when you go through checking off the boxes. Society tells you that if you go to school and you get the job and you raise the kids and you get the house and you get the title, that it's supposed to make you happy. And then the sense of frustration kicks in and you think that there's something wrong with you. And so really what I help people with is really leaning into the highest version of themselves. I just happen to do it through health. And I had worked at some of the biggest banks on Wall Street, like Goldman Sachs and Barclays and Deutsche Bank. Normalized frustration was the best way that I could describe it. And I remember thinking at what point is this it? Is this all that there is? And I tried to, find my way back to that 5-year-old kid. And it manifested itself through wanting to just put my wedding ring back on. And it was around this time that Facebook ads were a thing. And so I clicked a random Facebook ad and I walked into this tiny brick and mortar fitness studio. I'm crying my heart out to this woman. Oh my God, I'm so fat. I just want to put my wedding ring back on. And she kind of stares at me and she's like, "We're doing this boot camp and it's like $600. I can totally help you." I'm like, "Yeah, sure. Why not?" And it was 18 months later, I became kind of like a poster child for the studio. And then I got hired as a coach and then I ran boot camp classes. And I remember my first several clients, it was breathtaking. Just seeing them become the best version of themselves through fitness and nutrition coaching. And I'll never forget the first 10 of them. And I continued on Wall Street for a while. And this was my side hustle, but it was also my passion project. And for years, I kind of did the, here's my 9 to 5. Here's my passion project. I couldn't wait to wake up at 4 a.m. to run a 5 a.m. boot camp class. I couldn't wait to clock out just to run back and to run another boot camp class and then coach them. And it reminded me of the moment that I saw Mother Teresa helping those people that couldn't help themselves. It reminded me of that. And COVID hit. And I had to make a choice. And my husband's like, do your thing for a year. Just go all in. What's the worst that's going to happen? And I ended up, becoming the engine for a ton of Instagram influencers and other brick and mortars, kind of building and scaling everybody else's dream. And that same familiar sense of frustration started creeping in again. that I knew all too well. And I realized that I needed to do this on my terms. And that's when I founded Max Pact Health. I needed to do it in a way that felt authentic and most in alignment with me. And you realize this isn't about a meal plan. This isn't about boot camp and lifting weights. There's just so much more that goes behind transformation. Which is why I call myself transformation specialist. So that's how it all began. And I haven't looked back since.
I love having you here for a host of reasons, but so much of your experience is so aligned with my experience, making the change and then being the change and helping others do it. Okay, boot camp. Why not Zumba, yoga, Pilates, talk to me about boot camp.
Yeah, it's funny. That was literally the Facebook ad that came up. The studio was like 6 weeks and get to your goal weight. And I'm like, great, just tell me what to do. It just happened to be boot camp classes. So it was something that I just fell into. And at the time, I think it takes a certain flavor of a personality to stay in banking for years. You have such a high tolerance for pain and performance that it just kind of translated pretty naturally into like hardcore boot camp. So I just something I fell into, honestly.
Let's be fair. Boot camp's not for everybody.
No.
And I would say it the same way I would say yoga's not for everybody, Pilates is not for, and I've never taken an actual like Pilates reformer class, but I've done Pilates-esque classes in combination with yoga style stuff. But I love weights and I love to pick up heavy things. This is something I've done since back when I was a gymnast 40 years ago, but I also love like other forms of activity. I am not a fan of being out of breath though. And that makes like my understanding of how important my pulmonary health is. Like, just do it. So tell me a little bit about your client. Who's coming to you? Why is she or he coming to you? What do they get out of working with you versus somebody else?
So 99% of my clients are in the cell phone of my existing clients. And so they know exactly what it is that they're walking into because they've seen it in their friends. You can't unsee my clients like when they walk in the door. It's like how they radiate, how they body composition has changed, the way that they carry themselves. Like, you can't unsee their presence. And not for everybody. I always tell people that two great people with two great intentions does not mean a great relationship. And so my clients tend to be highly discerning and they're interviewing me as much as I'm interviewing them. And so the success between a client and a coach, it comes down to 65% of emotional resonance. So that's really what's going to dictate really like how successful they are in our relationship. My ideal client is a busy, high achieving professional. And so we actually create lifestyle habits that fit into the margins of their life. They've had massive success in other areas, whether it's parenting or business or the arts. It's like some form of where they were really at the top of their game, but their health was kind of the last sphere that they were out to tackle. And so I talk to them like a business person, right? Like, what are their KPI or key performance indicators? And they tend to be highly quantitative, like me. So one of the things that I did when I was in banking was creating financial models. You have a series of inputs, they pump into a model, and they produce a series of outputs. So if we think about time, 4 hours in a day, 86,400 seconds. Average attention span, 8 seconds. How do you manage your attention, right? And you fall to the level of your habits 95% of the time. So it's not the knowing what to do, right? If knowing what to do actually equated to transformation, like I would be out of a job. And so my clients understand that they have to invest in themselves to really close the gap. This is where they currently are, and this is where they're looking to be. Right now, there's a gap. What's the gap between knowing the book and actually writing the book? So I walk them through, well, what is the information gap? What is the execution gap? And then what is the consistency gap? That's really what actually transforms someone, is being consistent on the right things, which becomes an entirely different ballgame for women and men in the middle. They try and apply the same roadmap that they had in their 30s, thinking that it's going to apply in their 50s. And it just doesn't happen. And it's that revving, that like, I'm going to go big or go home, that's actually what backfires their results. And so they've tried literally everything. All of their old tricks don't work. They just don't have time. And so I really focus on, well, how do we actually make this program work in the margins of your life? So the results, they're really highly leveraged. Like they're looking for results, period, in a way that actually fits the capacity that they have in the season of their life.
So I think what I'm hearing, that means that you adapt for the person as opposed to everybody following the exact same plan. And I think this is something that's so important to me. It's like there are these, this thought like this, it has to be this way, the way that person did it, because they were successful. That means I will be successful at that. Not if it's not the right fit for me. So tell me about how you figure that out for your clients.
Yeah, so I love this question. So, I believe that everybody has a different starting point and that you have to be client centric. So, when people feel like engaging in a relationship with me as their best bet, we are together for 2 weeks. I have them get a biometric tracker, usually an Oura Ring, and I give them my app. And our agreement is they're going to send me everything they put in their mouth without shame and without judgment.
Shame and judgment, judgment and shame, embarrassment. Why do we do that? Or why do we think that other people are going to shame us for what's normal?
Because at some point in their life, someone told them that that part wasn't good enough. And that's why a lot of my work is actually in emotional literacy and nervous system regulation. Our identity is actually in our nervous system. A lot of our responses, I'm going to call them maladaptive coping mechanisms, shopping, addiction, scrolling on social media, stress eating, they're all just trying to solve a problem. They're trying to shortcut a level of discomfort. And after a while, what happens in midlife is like those cracks, those level of discomfort, all of the cracks eventually just break. And that's where they end up on my doorstep. And they're just at the point, they're like, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired.
That's sick and tired. Oh my gosh. I think one of the things that you said that's really important to me is that idea of judgment and shame, because there's a lot of embarrassment and shame associated with being overweight. I know I've been over 200 pounds before. And because I also work in the world of clutter, there's a lot of embarrassment and shame over mess, whether the mess is physical or digital. I think we are so unlikely to search out help if we think we're going to be judged by the person helping us. And I think this is where you and I are very aligned. And I've been there, which is why I am not going to judge you and shame you. I've lived it and breathed it.
That's right. And shame dies in safe spaces. How someone feels around another human is really going to dictate the success of that relationship. Because once they decide to step into the arena of vulnerability, on the other side of that vulnerability is their power, joy, and connection. And so, in the 2-week program that I run everybody through, it's really about, can I look at my behaviors? Can I actually take accountability and ownership of it and doing it in a way that comes from a place of like curiosity? So when we do something, right, which is an automatic behavior, it triggers like one side of the brain. But when we are held accountable, it triggers a different part of the brain. So just the mere act of being held accountable for something starts creating that space. I'm a huge fan of Carl Jung's work. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. And once you actually start creating that space, that's when you get the power to choose. And in that choice, there is a life that you want.
Tell me a little bit about, you said you give your clients an app and they're, submitting to you their daily nutrition and exercise. What does that look like?
Yeah. So so using the biometric tracker, I pull in all of their activity, right? Whether they're working out, whether they're walking, whether they're sitting, how much they're sleeping, how much they're not sleeping. And then when they start giving me their food log, it's almost acts like a speed bump. It's like, oh, do I really want to go for that second helping of Doritos? Because I have to take a picture. And it's like that pause where it's like, hey, like, then my question becomes, well, why does that craving make sense? So I focus a lot on something called deep health with people. It's not just nutrition and exercise. It's like the existential health. It's the relationship health. It's the emotional health. It's because oftentimes stress eating or zoning out in front of Netflix, not exercising, it's really just a way to like downward regulate, right? Because there are other parts in their life where their needs are not getting met. And so what is the quickest way to get their need met? Honestly, is food. right? And there is nothing as addicting as something that almost works. And with the industrialization of food that happened in the 1970s, it is so much easier to get our needs met with a bag of Doritos than it is to like talk to somebody through our vulnerabilities.
Yeah. This is interesting because one of the things that I share a lot in my world is that my father was a drug addict. Been for well over 30 years now, but deep addiction. His father before him was a gambler. Now, my grandfather, he rest in peace, would tell you, I'm not a gambler, I'm a player, but he lost. And he lost big things. He lost chunks of time from his family. Anyway, so I am very in touch with the fact that those addictions are based on providing comfort when comfort doesn't exist. And when I say comfort, it could be like coming down from something like really crazy and anxiety ridden, nervous, whatever. But it's also really great when you're looking for comfort, you need the mood elevated. And drugs work, gambling works, but it's very short term because guess what happens? Something way worse. And that's what I discovered for myself with food. Food made me feel so much better and it was so quick, but it was not long before I felt like crap physically and mentally over what was happening. And that dopamine hit, it comes from shopping and overspending and a lot of other really negative and unwanted behavior. But it doesn't mean we can just say, well, I'm not going to do that anymore. It's not about stopping a behavior. It's replacing it with a new, better one and taking the time or allowing yourself to take the time to like learn how to do that, how to function in that new space.
Yeah. I want to bring back something that was so important. It's the allowing, right? It's like the permission of giving yourself. And so many of the busy high achievers that I work with, there's a lot of guilt with giving themselves that time and giving themselves that allowance, right? So another thing that I really focus on with people is emotional literacy. And so what is guilt a signpost of? So, all of our emotions are data points, they're not endpoints. And so once we understand what or emotions are trying to tell us about our value set, we can respond versus react from a better place. It's like, oh, well, that just tells me that I care, right? When I feel guilt. Okay, what does a boundary actually look like? Where do you begin and and what is mine and what is yours? And so once you understand, especially like during midlife, it really comes down to like capacity management. And most of the people that I work with, it's like, I'm going to withdraw from my bank account, withdraw, 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 but they don't actually replenish. And so by the time it does do the more challenging things, they just don't have the bandwidth. And so then we hit the F it button. F it, I'll deal with it later. I'll start the diet tomorrow. I'll start eating better tomorrow. Right. And so that's really what's in the gap between knowing and doing. And that's really where I focus.
That's helpful to hear. I love the way you said that. So, in your bio, you talk about helping individuals and couples navigate perimenopause, burnout, and midlife pivots, et cetera. So, talk to me about working with couples. How does that work?
Yeah. So I love this question. It's either the women will come to me first or the man will come to me first. And I do a lot of like in-person, like virtual speaking engagements. And there's someone that's always in the audience is like, you know what? Like I just want to kind of talk to you. And it inevitably comes back to the stress as a function of like, let's say like the relationships. Right. So, I don't understand, why my wife has these seemingly like outsized reactions. And so when we think about what perimenopause and menopause is, there's a estrogen, which is a natural stress buffer, it actually decreases. And so if that stress buffer is not there, it amplifies a lot of emotions, which could be very triggering within a relationship. The spouse may be, well, I'm sitting here hoping in whatever maladaptive way, zoning out on television or working too much or eating too much. And then it's actually impacting my marriage. And then when you talk to the other couple, it's like, well, I just don't feel like myself again. Right. I don't I haven't changed anything about myself. Let's say like for a woman, I haven't changed anything about my diet or my lifestyle. And all of a sudden I have this like midsection that was like right there. And so when you start to work with a couple, you understand that it's not you against each other, it's actually you against a problem. And that's when the emotional regulation starts coming in. One of the most profound experiences that I have, and the reason why I love working with people in midlife is because their kids are about to be flown and grown, right? They're leaving college, they're about to graduate from college. And one of the most profound experiences is really like around this time of year when both parents are shipping kids off to college, and it becomes a very emotional experience for the child. The 18-year-old is like so overcome with this like transition because I've taught the parents how to self-regulate themselves through breath work or diaphragmatic breathing. They're actually able to teach that to the kid during orientation day. And so the kid actually learns how to self-regulate and they're able to stay in the hard moment instead of like having a complete meltdown. And so the feedback that I'll often get from a lot of my clients is like, had it not been for you, we wouldn't have been able to show up for our kid in that tough time. And that's why I love working with couples. And
Wow, you said so many things. First of all, my parents' relationship literally fell apart the day they left me at college. I was an only child. I think I was like the last tie to them being able to stick it out. It's like they dropped me off and oh my God, the tension, I don't think I really truly understood. There is a reason why I went to college 3,000 miles away from home. It was because I already knew this was brewing. I already felt the discomfort from it. I had to go to college in California for a host of reasons. But the one I didn't realize then that I realize now is that I needed to get away from my parents whose relationship was about to combust. You know, when you first were talking about working with couples, I imagine in my head, my gosh, my husband and I are going to work out together and that's going to be great for our relationship. And we've discovered something. We have such vastly different desires when it comes to working out. I brought him to yoga once. The relationship almost ended that night. I brought him to boot camp on Valentine's Day. You could bring your significant other for free that night. And I only got him there because I promised him pizza, which I know is not the best reward for exercise. But thank God that pizza was there because he was not happy with me. And the form of exercise that he loves most of all is getting on his bike. And he gets on his bike every day. Rainy day like this, he gets out as early as he can to make sure that it gets in. I have no interest in riding a bike in New York City. None at all. I learned how to ride a bike on the streets of New York City, but I have no interest in doing that. And that's beautiful because he does his thing, I do my thing, and we both see those things as important parts of our lives, but we don't have to do them together. I know people, they go to the gym together and they do this and they're having a great time. And I'm like, what's wrong with me and my husband? We have different tastes when it comes to that. And that's all.
that's right. It's interesting because I'll have some couples where they want to be coached together. They have some where they will have two very discrete programs where they don't talk to one another and maybe they'll hang out together when they're meal prepping, but like that's the extent of the whole conversation. And so it's really about crafting lifestyle practices that work for them as an individual. And if there is synergy with them doing it together, then great. You have to be client centric first and not couple centric. Right? Because if you work with them as an individual, they become whole again. This is really just about integrating like all parts of themselves. And so when they're whole, they're able to become that sturdy leader, not just for themselves, but like for their marriage and for their kids, right? This is about creating like sturdy leadership of oneself. And so if doing boot camp brings you to like the most sturdy version of yourself, I mean, boyfriend, girlfriend, like have at it. That's an expression of like the highest version of you. And maybe it's yoga and maybe honestly it's just walking. But the commitment that I have for people is because you have 168 hours in your week and you're likely going to fall to however you spend that time, 95% of the time. It's like, well, what are the 20% of the behaviors that are going to give them the 80% of the results? And to constrain that where like it has to be us together, you're just doing yourself a disservice.
My husband and I have been married for 30 years. We've been together it'll be 37 next month. We don't have to do everything together. And that perhaps that's one of the things that makes our relationship work so well. Okay, so this is all really great information. And I think that people listening are like, this doesn't sound so far off from the kind of stuff that Melanie talks about when it comes to physical and mental clutter. And so much of what I'm hearing from you is navigating mental clutter in gaining, the body, the mind, the soul that you really want. So this is the podcast about clutter. I bring on a lot of experts in different areas and everybody has their own clutter. And when I talk about clutter, we talk about the calendar, we talk about paper, we talk about social media, 24-hour news cycle. I say all those things that fast because I want people to like hear it and see it as something stressful so they can recognize exactly how much mental and emotional clutter comes from the other clutter around us. That said, everybody, even if they have the most perfectly organized home, like I can eat off the floor, we still have some form of clutter. So, Diana, what's
Yes.
your clutter?
Oh my goodness. What is my clutter? I'm gonna say distraction. That is my clutter. I've really taken it upon myself this year to figure out what is my constraint against stillness. And so I tried to do the meditating, sit there in silence, and I'm like, I want to eat glass sitting here in stillness. How is this satisfying? I don't understand how this is a thing. I'm so wildly curious. So I'm like, I need someone to do to me what I do for other people, really, which is like managing their attention on the things that are going to give them results, right? And I know that the more laser focused I am with my attention, which is a function of like how I manage distraction, which is a function of stillness. Because in that stillness is really like where your white space is, like the creativity. And so the more you stay in that parasympathetic state, and you're able to like upward regulate and downward regulate yourself, you have significantly more control where and how you focus. So what I found worked for me, because I'm just such a deeply feeling person, is I actually needed in-person somatic work to help me manage my distraction. And so when you learn about, when you really start tapping into this idea of embodiment, it's like when I drink several cups of coffee, my tolerance for frustration, which is already pretty high, that actually drains my battery, which leaves me more susceptible to distraction. It's about not only do I work hard, but in order for me to work efficiently, I need time to recover, which really only happens in stillness. But like, how do I get to that? And for me, honestly, it's somatic work and acupuncture, because it's almost like a main line into that state of stillness, if that makes sense.
It makes 100% sense. And you know, one of the things that I'm hearing is a great coach has a coach. You know, a great coach is working on themselves and not with them being the guide, but allowing for someone else to guide us. And I believe in that wholeheartedly. And somatic work is you know, an amazing way to do that. Okay, you were talking about your dad, about how you're nothing if it's not doctor, lawyer, financier, whatever. What does he think about what you're doing now?
It's so funny because we have this conversation a lot. And I think that my dad, who is in his late 70s, is now coming into his own, which is so wildly fascinating to watch, right? Like as his daughter and as an adult. You know, I don't know if about you, but you know, you get to the point where you see your parents, you're just like, oh my God, like you're a human too. You're like not my parent. Like, do you know what I mean? And you're like, oh,
I
you're
think one of mine listens to this, so I'm going to be careful how I answer that.
it's like you're a fallible human. Okay, I see where that little trauma is coming from and why you have those feelings. Those are valid. And so like I'd sit there and I'd talk to my dad, and he's just like, "Oh, they're doing some like really cool stuff," and I'm like, "Yeah." And he was a doctor, so it was like, "Oh, you know, are you gonna go to med school?" I was like, "Well, Dad, I was thinking about being a personal trainer," and he's just like, "Yeah, so about that med school." And I think what I've done for my dad is redefined what success could look like for people. Here's the title, here's the income, here's the house, here's the resume. But that's such a reductive way to define success. And you know, I'm going to share something really morbid with you. So I write my obituary every 2 weeks. How I define success at the end of my life is at the age of 100, I will be living in a 400 square foot tiny home. That's how I define success, a life completely unencumbered. And I'm going to be able to look back at these like last 60 years of my life and know that I have been the gateway to like fundamentally transforming people into like the highest version of themselves, however they define autonomy and success, right? And that really brings me back to that 5-year-old version of myself when I saw Mother Teresa of Calcutta. And I knew even like way back when that like I was put on this earth to help people that couldn't yet help themselves. And so when I'm 100, it's not about what I've accumulated, it's about indelible mark that I've left on humans, right? And so when I have these existential conversations with my dad, he's just like, oh, okay, I get it now. So he's like, oh, so you didn't have to go into medicine to do that. And I was like, no.
I love that at 5, you wanted to do great things, because at 5, I wanted to be a roller skating gymnast princess doctor, Okay, anyway, you also had me thinking about my dad, because, it mentioned earlier, he's been clean for over 30 years, but no one knows better than he does how exercise supports his mental and physical health. And my father, 79 years old, every morning gets in his car, drives to the park, puts his roller skates on, and goes around the park once or twice, and then goes home and goes to work. And if in the afternoon he is experiencing stress, he will stop working, get in his car, drive back to the park. And so he does a really great job of redirecting the stress to something that is good both for his mind and his body. I don't want to say he does this so that he doesn't do drugs. It is a benefit there, knowing what is the behavior that's going to provide me with the comfort that I deserve physically and mentally. And this is something that can help, prolong his life. And you brought up another thing. I love that you're writing your obit like that, because my dad on a regular basis says, well, I'm not going to be around much longer. I'm not going to be around much longer. And I used to say, oh, poo, don't say that. But that's negating his feelings. Normalize talking about death and dying. He takes better care of himself than any of the other parents in my life, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to be here forever. I love everything that we've been talking about today. This has been amazing. Before we finish up, a last thought, something that you want people to take away from our conversation today.
I believe in this concept of intergenerational wealth, and it has nothing to do with money, but it has everything to do with how we model the way we live for the next generation. And so kids will not do what you say. They're going to watch you through a microscope. And so if you're struggling with your kids, and every parent does, including myself, one of the things that I'm working on is be the change that you want them to see. Because focusing on your health and focusing on what's good for you and having them see it is one of the greatest gifts.
I almost want to end on that, but then I realize you have to talk to me about the baseball bat behind you. Diana's sitting in her office, wherever she is. There's a beautiful painting on the wall, but below it is a baseball bat. And as a sports fan, I noticed that. So where's the bat from?
So full disclosure, I have a husband and I have 2 kids, a 10-year-old and a 15-year-old, and they are massive baseball fans. They're like diehard Mets fans. That's them. I'm just around for the ride.
I love it. Diana, thank you so much for being here and sharing your magic.
It was such a pleasure, Melanie. I'm so excited for this. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Awesome.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of Lighten Up, the Art of Living Clutter-Free. I hope you found a spark of inspiration to help declutter not just your space, but your mind and life as well. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who could use a little lightness in their life. Remember, it's not about being perfect. It's about progress. Small steps lead to big changes, and I'm here to help you every step of the way. For more tips, resources, and ways to connect, check out my website, follow me on social media, and don't forget to check out the Design Your Healthy Life Strategy program to take your transformation even further. Until next time, keep letting go of what no longer serves you and making room for what truly lights you up.